It doesn't matter that we had Stasis Nerfs, this new Warlock build lets your Rift yeet bosses across the map. Okay, that's a bit too far. It pushes them a little bit, which is actually quite funny, but simultaneously they'll take damage on impact, be slowed indefinitely, whilst also getting frozen and shot at by an automated turret that pretty much lasts forever. And if that's not enough, we'll also be chaining ability energy between our grenades and rifts, whilst defeating frozen targets, and guys, this build is insane for ad clearing. Not to mention that you don't even need to slot on overload rounds to defeat overloads, and most of the time you can run into Legend and Master Lost sectors like a headless chicken. But don't push your luck too far, because you're not invincible. So guys, rate, comment, sub, share, and let's start. Firstly, I will point out that this video is a little longer than I wanted it to be, as they're usually less than 6 minutes, but hopefully you guys will get some useful information out of this one. Now, this is the first time I've actually created a Warlock Stasis build here on the channel, but I've finally got around to making one. And this build is fairly similar to my Arc Turret build with Chaos Reach, so if you're not a fan of Stasis but want a similar build, go check out that. Or view the entire playlist for some more other crazy builds, it's linked below and in the top right card section of the video. So with this build, you'll be chaining energy between your Rift and your grenades by defeating frozen targets, and you should always have your grenade and Rifts fully charged, with the previous one still active at all times, before the old one expires. This build is fantastic in team-based activities like Nightfalls and other endgame content. I'd use this in Legend and Master activities, but just be careful when using a build because you're not unstoppable, but we'll be using our Rift all the time, so we'll get infinite healing, and casting our Rift is going to do some serious damage to adds. It will freeze them, knock them back, and most of the time when you cast it next to an enemy, you're going to instantly kill them and generate more ability energy. You'll be throwing Stasis turrets around every 10 to 20 seconds as well, which should keep those tough adds and champions busy, as you'll be freezing them permanently. Now if you use this build right, you should be running into adds, place a Rift down, instantly freezing them all if not killing them or knocking them back, get a weapon kill which then generates a void elemental well, which then picking up that well will give you a charge light stack, ability energy and damage resistance against adds, then throw your Stasis turret which automatically consumes your charger light stack, refunding some grenade energy, and then just repeat the process. Ideally this build works better in easier activities, but it's designed to be used for Nightfalls and other endgame content, whether you're playing in a team or solo, so now let's go through that build setup. Starting with the loadout, we're using Traveller's Chosen. I believe you get this from the exotic archive at the tower, but don't take my word on that. Now you don't have to use this, but it does help to keep all your abilities active constantly from low to mid tier difficulty adds, as we'll get that extra ability energy using the weapon's exotic trait. But if you don't want to use this, then you can use weapons that have a Wellspring or Demolitionist perk on weapons like a Hung Jury and a Vision Raid Scout. Although these are 180 scout rifles, which aren't great, but they are just examples, but you guys get the point. Try to use a weapon with those perks to generate ability energy to maximize this build's efficiency. Your heavy weapon doesn't really matter, so you can use what you want. Ideally though, for your best loadout for endgame content and this build would be a primary weapon with a Wellspring perk and an Anarchy for dealing boss DPS. The build is designed for ad clearing and helping you defeat champions easily, so you will need a good heavy weapon for DPS with this build. Now for the subclass, we're using a Warlock Stasis Shadebinder with a dust-filled grenade. Now the grenade doesn't matter because you will be converting it into a turret, but sometimes you may throw it if you're mastering this build and get used to the way the build works, then you will have enough energy to get a turret as well as using a grenade. But 9 times out of 10, you'll just throw down multiple Stasis turrets rather than using the actual grenade. For the aspects, we are using the Bleak Watcher to create those turrets, and they will slow and freeze enemies, and they last a really long time, so it's definitely the best thing to use on a Warlock Stasis build. But we also have Frost Pulse, where casting our Rift generates a shockwave that freezes nearby combatants, and you'll see why this is great later because our Rift is the main part of this build. But for your fragments, you'll want Whisper of Refraction to get class ability energy when defeating slowed or frozen enemies, which really works well with that aspect. And on top of this, we're using Whisper of Chains to take less damage from enemies whilst near frozen targets, and if you guys master this build, you're always going to be around frozen enemies. And then finally we have Whisper of Fissures to increase the damage and size of stasis when we defeat frozen targets. For your exotic armor, we'll be using Vesper of Radius, more on this shortly, but your other option is Eye of Another World. But starting with our helmet mods, we have Well of Tenacity, which is a new elemental well mod introduced this season, which will reduce the damage we take from combatants when we pick one up. Next we have Dynamo to reduce super cooldown when using our class ability near enemies, which we will be doing all the time, especially in casual activities. If you're going into things like a Master or Grandmaster Nightfall, then replace this with your heavy weapons ammo finder mod. For your gauntlets, we have firepower to regain some grenade energy when using it. It stacks with other copies of the mod, but overall it's not required, but it's just a bonus, as the quicker we get our grenades, the more turrets we can throw down and just freeze everything. But with this, we have our champion mods for the activity you're going into. For the chest, we use Vesper of Radius, where rifts release an arc shockwave when cast, and I believe this is what causes the small yeet to enemies, which is pretty funny. But our rift will recharge faster when we are surrounded, and this is no joke. I mean, it charges so quick. We'll have infinite rifts pretty much. But the only mod you need for this is the new elemental well mod, Reaping WELLMAKER, where after using our class ability, the next weapon final blow will spawn a void elemental well. Now we'll get to that in just a second, but you can slot on ammo reserve mods if you want for your heavy weapon, or damage resistant mods, whichever you prefer. Now for the legs, we have elemental charge to become charger light when picking up those void wells, and picking up that void well will give us damage resistance, give us a charger light stack, as well as ability energy, so it's a pretty valuable well. But alongside this, slot on your heavy weapons ammo scavenger mod. Lastly, moving into the class, we have taken charge to become charger light on all pickups, one of my favourite mods, but probably not needed if you maximize your rift's usage, but you can decide if you think it's worth using or not. And alongside this, we have some ability cooldown mods, which will help get those abilities even quicker than it already is, which is what you really want for an ability specific build. Now you can switch this out to whatever you prefer, so if you don't want to use this, you can use the new seasonal mods we have in season 14, which are Sundering Blast, Energy Accelerant, or Breach and Clear, but I feel they're really not needed, as the amount of splash damage we have with our stasis is good enough as it is. But let me know what you think below. I also forgot to mention, but I want to point out that using a sword would probably be a good choice here with this build. And if you have the new one, which I don't, and use the Energy Accelerant mod, you can actually insta-kill Master Champions even whilst underpowered, which is quite funny to watch. But if you have it, use it. I believe it's called Crown Splitter, but I could be wrong. If you guys know, do leave a comment below, but there should be an image of it on screen now. Finally though, for your stats, you want to max out Discipline and Recovery to get the grenade and rift back quickly, passively, over time. Now for this build, I would rate it around a 9 out of 10 for how fun and effective it is for ad clearing. Give me your rating below if you got this far, but the advantages of this build are that it's good for ad clearing, fantastic for helping you defeat champions, good to use in both as a team and playing solo, and you'll always have the support from the Stasis turrets and your healing rift to make the endgame a lot easier. And because we'll always have our rift back quickly, modifiers like attrition where you don't regenerate health won't be an issue because we'll have that rift to heal us. I would use this in light activities mostly though, like strikes, override, legend lost sectors and that sort of stuff, but you can use it in master activities if you want. It'll just be a little harder to use and maintain all the abilities. But if you're taking it in there, my simple advice is to just take it slow and steady and don't rush in like a god, because 10 times out of 10 you're probably just going to get yourself killed, as no build makes you invincible. But this one does help you quite a lot compared to most other builds out there. But guys, that is all for this one, and next you should check out the playlist for more awesome builds for all types of activities, characters and playstyles. But for now, leave a comment of your favourite build, drop a rating, punch that subscribe and throw the share to all your buddies, and I'll see you guys shortly for the next one. Stay tuned.